everyone, I'm here with my first full video of Slavic Summer, wherein I will be describing to you a book in particular and then reflecting on some of the thoughts, beliefs, suggestions, imaginations, machinations, and dreams that this book inspired within me. So today's book is The Bonfire by György Dragomán. I'm just going to read the back to give you some insight. The way I'm going to structure this video is first talking about the book, the events of the book, whether or not I liked it. Then I'll mention a couple of things about Dragomán, and then I want to get into one of the main themes of this book, or not themes, I guess, what is it, tropes, which is witchcraft. So the back of the book reads, 13-year-old Emma grows up under an Eastern European dictatorship where oppression seems eternal. When her dissident parents die in a car accident, she's brought to an orphanage only to be taken in soon by a grandmother she has never met. While her homeland is shattered by a violent revolution, Emma, like a witch's apprentice, comes to learn the ways of her new grandmother, who can tell fortunes from coffee dregs, inflict and soothe pain at will, and shares her home with the ghost of her husband. But there's another reason her grandmother is treated with suspicion and contempt by most of the people in the town. They suspect her and her deceased husband of having been involved in the disappearance of official secret police documents. As Emma learns her family history, she begins to see that, for her grandparents, the alternate reality shaped by magic was their only form of freedom. The Bonfire is a political gothic carried along by menace and promise of a fairy tale. I think that's a very good description of the back of the book. I think what the back of the book perhaps implies is that there's going to be this sort of linear story. That doesn't really happen. We do get this, we do get sort of the through line of the town is suspicious of the grandmother and grandfather. And in that line, there is like, it sort of permeates, but it is not a continual growth. Not every single chapter involves that, and not every chapter connects neatly to the other. There's a lot, it's not necessarily just jumping around in time, but it's sort of told more in the style of vignettes with a through line. That's one of the stories. Another one of the kind of through lines is her grandmother's friendship with a Jewish girl in her family when the Nazis, like, they don't say the Nazis, but it's very obvious, when the Nazis were kind of occupying the city that they're in. And I think that that is an interesting way of looking at this, and the way that the story is told, I think, is very unique because it's told in second person. So the grandmother tells a story to Emma, but she tells it to Emma as though Emma was the one doing everything, right? And I think it creates a very an interesting relationship in between these stories and between these characters, and to me kind of has this conversation about how these cycles of like kind of government violence on people, or systemic violence, state violence, etc., oppression, it gives it more of a sense of that kind of generational trauma that I think the book a little bit discusses. I didn't necessarily love the way that the story was told in vignettes. I didn't hate it, but I don't think it made this story stick out the best. But in that way, I do think it almost reminds me a little bit, and I mentioned this show before, Dairy Girls, and how Dairy Girls is told, like, it's episodic, obviously. However, within those episodes, we see Dairy as it's living through, you know, the Troubles, or I don't know, the Troubles was the 70s, right? As it's living through like violent clashes. And so in this book, we sort of see this young girl, her life, these things that are happening to her, and in the backdrop of them, the revolution, the violence, the way that wealth is being consolidated in the hands of certain individuals. Like, there's sort of a character that I would almost liken to like the city's oligarch or something. And so I just think that there's a lot of sort of things happening in the background while we're watching Emma go through her life. In terms of how, like, would I recommend people to read this, I think if these are themes that are interesting to you, this is a good way to do it. But if you're looking for something a little more action oriented, despite that this isn't like a like pensive novel. Like it's not as action oriented. It doesn't have that like magicalness of like a fantasy world, or like a ooh, she's learning witchcraft. It doesn't have that. It's not like, you know, it's very dreamlike. It's very much like the veil of a memory. You're not encountering like, she said this and then he said that, then she said this and he said that, and then Harry Potter walked back to the dormitory and sat and stewed for an hour. Ron came in and said, Harry, what, you know what I mean? It's not like that. It's not that kind of like the storyline. It's a lot more wispy, if you will. So yes, and in that, it doesn't make it a quick read, right? I thought that Battle Royale was very fast-paced. In my opinion, this book is much more slow-paced. I really enjoyed the descriptions of the magic, and in some ways it kind of made me feel about how whenever you watch a family member, specifically older family members, do something like that, where they're cooking or sewing or creating something that is a very domestic thing, it almost seems magical to you. Like, I don't know, my grandma making borscht, like she makes it and it seems like wizardry to me, and then you learn that there's all these steps, and at some point as a woman you sort of take into that role of learning the steps. I think this theme of apprenticeship is so interesting, because I think that in many ways women like always become apprentices, and I kind of wonder, do like people like, do men have that like sense of apprenticeship? There are certain things where I think they do, but I don't think that there's these tasks that are so like delineated as male anymore in like the parts of the culture that I'm growing up in, right? Like I think probably hunting and fishing are an example of that, where you can like apprentice under your dad, but I'm not seeing that in my neck of the woods. I also have to say that this book has a romantic subplot. Okay, so in The Bonefire, there's such a theme of like kitchen magic, food magic, and it's mentioned so many times, Emma's grandmother cooking. And I kind of decided to maybe incorporate some magical healing elements into the food that I'm making. So I've been making donuts. Here is a little example donut. Very, very cute. I'll show you the inside in a second. And I decided to incorporate some poppy seeds into my little mixture. So basically, I fry them and then I roll them in a mixture. I mortar up some hazelnuts, which I have a little video of, and then I mix it with sugar and I add poppy seeds, and poppy seeds are like the magical addition. And then I roll, like once the donut's cold, I like roll it in the poppy seed hazelnut sugar mixture. The poppy seeds are supposed to like represent youthfulness and childfulness, and I think that kind of just fits really well with donuts. When I eat these donuts, I like to mix them, like I like to dip them in yogurt. So I have this Frivan authentic Armenian yogurt. I just got this from Whole Foods. I had used previously Bulgarian yogurt, and I think I like it more. Like there's a little bit too much texture on this one for me. It's really good. So I drop the yogurt down, and then I like to take a little bit of the nut, sugar, and poppy seed mixture, add that in, then just take the donut, rip it open. Like, look at that, look how pretty that is. It has all of the like really wonderful, like, oh, you're not gonna be able to see, it's not gonna focus. The really wonderful like airiness and bubbliness of yeasted dough. And then I just kind of dip it. This yogurt's a little runny, so it's harder to pick it up. But yeah, so good. The dough itself isn't too sweet. It's like that perfect amount of sweetness. And then there's like a little bit of crunch from the sugar and the hazelnut and the poppy seeds. I love the taste of poppy seeds. And then the sourness from the yogurt is so good. It's a great way to add like protein and probiotics into your dessert. Amazing. They're so easy to make, guys. Make donuts. All you need is flour, yeast, milk, butter, egg, sugar, salt, and oil to fry them. It's really easy. You just kind of incorporate all the elements. I let the dough, I let the yeast kind of, bloom, blossom, activate in water and sugar for like 5 to 10 minutes. Then I incorporate it into the dough. Use a like hand mixer or a stand mixer with a dough hook. I don't have a stand mixer. I use like a regular mixer. And then you let it proof for an hour. You roll them out into little balls, let them proof for like another 45 minutes. You drop them in the oil until they turn golden brown. You really want to make sure that they turn golden brown, and don't make them too big because they will kind of balloon up in the oil. And then you just roll them around in the mixture. And honestly, like I said, I laughed about milk because I don't ever have milk, but I have yogurt. So I've just been doing like a half yogurt, half water mixture for however much milk it requires. And even this time, like the recipe, I also haven't been using the same recipe each time. The recipe that I used, this one called for 3 eggs for the full batch. I only made a half batch, and I just used 1 egg. I didn't use half an egg, right? And this turned out really good. This is great. I feel like we don't eat enough yogurt. Like, bring back yogurt. Oh, the other thing I like to do, and I haven't seen it in all recipes, but I saw one of them, is I grate a bunch of nutmeg into the dough, so it adds a little extra flavor. I love nutmeg, and it works really well in the dough. It's so good. Okay. I have more donuts, but I'm done for now. So I'm just gonna scoop up the yogurt off the plate and eat that. This is so good. Sorry, brief interlude of roommate return from walk. There is a romance plot to this book, a subplot, and it ends really, really well. I was super surprised with how well I think the author handled it. I thought the ending was great. I think the way the attitudes shift towards the end is so good, and I think it's one of, to me, like the most realistic and like conclusions in the book, how the book kind of concluded the story, and how the two characters related to each other. I think his name was Peter or Piotr. It wasn't Piotr. Peter and Emma, how they like ended and how she felt about him, I thought was really realistic. Dragomán, I tried to find like interviews with him, but all of them are in probably Hungarian, and given how difficult Hungarian is of a language, I didn't think I could learn that in time to make this video. But he also has a book, The White King, which is very well, highly considered, and I think it's very similar style of this, of like young boy relationship with like an older person, told in this vignette style, political backdrop. So I would potentially think about picking up that book, but I don't think it would be anytime soon. Maybe a few years down the road, if I want to kind of see what's up, I might pick it up, if that makes sense. Anyway, I am in my bed, just gonna do some reading before I go to sleep, and
I thought I would read from Baba Yaga about the benefits of poppy seeds. Poppy protects from evil spirits, protects from ill-intentioned people, fertility, youth, beauty, dreams. So I am not going to encounter any people with bad vibes. I'm going to be very fertile and young. Poppy seeds are also used a lot of times to like as a protection. So you'll like spill it over like a doorway or in the cracks of your home. It's because evil spirits, they will have to count the poppy seeds so they can't get in. So take that, bad spirits. I had a lot of poppy seeds, so you're not going to get anywhere past me. And then in addition to that, I'm reading The Hidden History of Gay Oppression in the USSR. I'm not very far in, only 63 pages. I was kind of hoping to finish this in June, but I don't think that's going to happen. If I get tired of this, I might pick up another book, something a little bit lighter, because this is really, really heavy, but who knows. I also might keep watching Psych, so.
And now to the second part of this video, wherein I would like to discuss the magical elements of this book. The magic in this book serves multiple purposes. Not only is it a way for the grandmother and Emma to have a connection, to have a kind of passing on of information, but also it just kind of puts them in the same room together. It's an interest, it's an intrigue, and it's an ability to provide protection. Let me tell you how to survive terrible events. We also see how it becomes this meditative practice, like the prime numbers example. And now I'm really thinking I need to learn prime numbers because of kind of a scene in the book. I think that we also see how the grandmother uses magic to protect herself, to protect others. The mother kind of rejects this apprenticeship and then dies in the car accident, and Emma learns the magic, and we can imagine that she will be protected. And so we can see how turning your back on this magical practice can result in danger. Reading this book made me think about a lot of how magic is, how is it practiced, how is it used, how do people believe in it, and when does it come into our lives. I feel like in the last, probably last like 7 years, I've seen a lot greater rise in the esoteric and people doing and practicing it. This could be not cognitive bias, but like this could be a bias because I've been seeing, like looking out that stuff and seeking that stuff out, but I definitely think it's become a lot more mainstream. The places that will have like astrology things next to it, or like sell sage or candles or witchy things, there's definitely a kind of pop element to this. I'm kind of reminded of like pop recession music, how music becomes very poppy around a recession. I question, is there a similar relationship to witchcraft, to these callbacks to kind of a higher power, but maybe one that you have a little bit more control in? I think the way a lot of people discuss Christianity, there isn't this element of being able to commune and change things. It's more like God will do what God will do and you're sort of sitting there, versus witchcraft is very much about influencing and having a power and having a stake in the world around you. I think personally I've noticed a few trends. I was reading an article that I will post in the kind of description of this video about how people in the Eastern Europe, like Slavic people, are really coming in, getting into greater touch with their own magic. Similar to the book, a lot of it is very much like kitchen magic, herbal magic. So as an example, a lot of Eastern European Slavic witchcraft revolves around the domestic. I'll show you here. Baba Yaga is said to fly around in a mortar and pestle, and even in this book there are chapters on like the spindle, the oven, enchanted food, the loom, hair, and a lot around like flowers and like kind of flower magic, herbal magic. This is very much in communion, right? Like women practicing witchcraft, whether or not they did it as like a kind of community role, it was a part of one's life. Like even hair had a like magical connection, and I think that's very interesting because it allows for modern women to then also do these things as well, have these practices in their own lives. It is not this thing that you have to like kind of separate yourself out from, like you can do predictions based on bread, which I did last year in my Slavic Summer video. You can cut your hair a certain way. You can dig a hole and whisper into the ground and then listen for Mother Earth responding to you. All things you can do, you can participate in, and many of them wouldn't require you to do things outside of your normal life. I think especially with Ukrainian women, there is probably the article talks about this, but I think in general a trend of wanting to find these techniques, things like wyszywanka, things like spiritual practices that are culturally specific, because right now when your culture is under attack, you want to preserve it, you want to find ways of maintaining it within yourself, and witchcraft is one of the ways we do this because of the Eastern Europe's pagan origins pre its Christianization. That is one side of this, but I also kind of want to bring in my own separate thoughts about witchcraft in today's day and age. I think that a lot of this is, in my mind, there is like it exists almost on this like spectrum of like the woman of today, and I think we see her on one hand the tradwife and on the other hand the witch. And I think this is sort of perhaps like an American comparison. We see a lot of these tradwives, and what they're trying to do is create this ritualistic nature, connecting with the home, connecting with a certain set of values, and those are like very conservative, typically Christian values in the US at least. I think what we're seeing in other parts of the world is this connection to like nature, to something beyond the day-to-day of life, spirituality, and also a connection to community. One of the features of witchcraft has often been providing a service for those around you. It's not a solely private, personal thing that you do. You can provide a service for others. You can do something for others. You can cast a spell for someone else. You can remove a spell for someone else. And so in this way, it's providing a service. I also see so many like master classes on how to read tarot, how to do astrology, how to become a tarot reader, and then people providing those services. I think in this way it connects back to that pop recession idea of ways for women who are not able to find careers for themselves are able to create a kind of third economic space where they're providing a service that is not sort of seen as a job, which again, similar, right? Like this community orientedness, this providing of the services. I think that's something to me that's really interesting to see about tradwife dialogue discourse, is in my mind of like 70 years ago or whatever, right? Like I'm thinking like our town era, like women were doing a lot of work, but they weren't just doing it for the walls of their family. They were providing community work. They were, I'm gonna have a skill, I'm gonna be a knitter, and even if everyone kind of knows how to knit, you can knit and then sell your stuff or knit something for someone else. Someone is really good at sewing, they'll, hem things for other people. There were ways in which women who were traditional wives back in the ye olde days also still did work that provided this value and benefit and like thing for the community. And I think that the tradwife dialogue ignores that, because it's really separated. It's really much like I'm just doing these things for my family, my home, my people, and not this is how I actually have to make money in order to help sustain my family. And I think that's a very interesting comparison between the witchcraft, the master classes, the women who are learning these skills and learning to monetize them, which the tradwives are monetizing it, right? The Nara Smiths of the world, who's that lady who like made cough drops for her kids, what? They're doing these things, and we understand it's a business. Okay, you and I understand it's a business, but she does not. She does not sell it in that way, even though clearly she's monetizing this content. It's obviously a business. I think it's a very interesting way to see how do we use in the book. We see how the characters use witchcraft as like a personal shield, but how do we culturally see the trends of the esoteric, the magical, right? The reading the moon cycles and eating bread. How does that become a part of one's daily ritual practice, and why does it come and go? Why is it cyclical? Why is it trend-like? And I don't know, I think those are like really interesting things to think about, and I think thinking about the idea that these things are culturally significant and not stable constants, I think that's a fascinating way. Like what are the kind of archetypal eras, and what are some of the features of those eras, are fun discussions to have with oneself and others on the internet. Well, now that I've read that book, Slavic Summer shall continue marching ever forward, and the book that I'm currently reading is Red Closet by Rustam Alexander. I've not gotten very far. I'm like 86 pages in. It's 240 pages, I think. So yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye.